The Fourth Amendment to the Constitution states that the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Okay, now I'm on the website for the Cornell Law School Legal Information Institute. What that basically means is that the Fourth Amendment is supposed to protect us, again, from unreasonable searches and seizures of property by the government, but also against, arbitrary arrests. And here's what it says. It's the basis of the law regarding search warrants, stop and frisk, safety inspections, wiretaps, and other forms of surveillance, as well as being central to many other criminal law topics and to privacy law. Okay. That said, now I'm just going to read what I wrote here. To those who have been outspoken about the possibility of a complete government takeover, and of course martial law, and for those who are very outspoken about states' rights and the rights of states to govern themselves without federal input or interference. Where are you now? Why are you silent? I've spoken in the past about this topic in regard to how modern-day Zersetzung, what we today call organized stalking, is being used in order to work up the population against chosen targets. But what happens when the government begins making laws that allow federal agents to violate the constitutional rights of American citizens? The wrongfully named Patriot Act pretty much nullified our Constitution. Former President Bush signed the Anti-Patriot Act, that's what I'm going to call it, into existence. Former President Obama renamed it but kept the worst parts of it. He never got rid of it. And current President Trump, the Trump administration, has taken it to a whole other horrifying level. It should be understood by now that no president of either party is going to help us. This nightmare began long before Trump. He didn't start it, but I think he might finish it. Meaning, the Orwellian dystopia that the rulers have been working towards for the last few decades is now going to emerge. And he's part of that. He's not going to help us any more than any of the other presidents did. Certain states have now... Let me restart that. Certain states now have unidentified federal agents, meaning people dressed in military garb but who have no identification, apprehending American citizens off the streets without identifying themselves to the people they're apprehending, without telling them why they're being grabbed, why they're being arrested, and then throwing them into unmarked vehicles and driving off to an unknown location. In many cases, the people being abducted and detained don't even know if they're being kidnapped by random armed civilian groups with wicked intent. Not only is this anti-constitutional, it's dangerous, as it sets the stage for any community militia to dress up in military gear, grab people off the streets, and, well, you get the idea. People won't know whether they're dealing with real law enforcement or community watch groups run amok. So, that geared, heavily armed patrol that stops to question you, are they actual government employees, or are they a group of citizens dressed like law enforcement who are abusing their power in order to intimidate and silence anyone whose opinions they disagree with? Right, this is one reason that I dislike the idea of community watch groups, well, this and organized stalking. This has happened in numerous states now, and I mean armed, geared, unidentified combatants, supposedly federal agents, grabbing American citizens off the streets. And recently it has taken place in Oregon, against the wishes of the state. Isn't it something that the very people who are always screaming for states' rights and for a smaller federal government, and even some of them, they want to eliminate the federal government, and not even I would go that far. But isn't it something that those people are now applauding this invasion of the states by said federal government? So much for states' rights. And tell me, Where in the hell are the libertarians now? Why are they silent? This is a spit in the face to any true patriot who defends our Constitution and our freedom. This is the type of thing that happens when dictators take over. This is what Hitler did when he took over Germany, leading up to World War II. This is what the communists did when they took over Germany after World War II. Okay? Under Hitler, it was the secret police was the Gestapo. Under the communists, it was the Stasi. Today we are witness to the reoccurrence of the worst events in human history, and just as people went along with such things in the past, so too do they go along with it today. Oh, they might claim to stand against the crimes of the past, yet they repeat those very crimes and lie to themselves to justify doing it. And why do they do it? The same reason those who came before them did it. Because the leader they trust told them that this is good and right, and therefore they block out anything that gets in the way of that illusion, or delusion, both. Nothing really changes, does it? They blindly follow their leader, right into the pit. It's the blind leading the blind. To those who call themselves patriots, it's time to speak up. Don't sit by and allow this to happen to people just because you disagree with their political views. These are your fellow Americans, for Christ's sake. Tell me, if the government were to come out and officially declare martial law, would you go along with it simply because you believe that the only people who stand to be harmed by such are those that you view as rivals? Would you allow such a thing to be carried out on U.S. soil, and thus normalized, simply because you dislike the group who stands to suffer the most as a result of it, at least initially? In the end, everybody will suffer because of this. Why? Well, here's why. Once you allow this to happen to others, you normalize it as a way of life in America. Thus, in the end, you as well will be affected by it. You might not think it'll affect you now, but it will. All right, they're doing this. They're scapegoating certain groups of people and doing this to those groups because they know that many of you will allow it. You know, you'll allow it without considering that what you're allowing to take place, what you're allowing to be legalized, is going to be used against you one day. This goes back to what Jesus said. Don't do unto another what you would not want another to do unto you. Everything else is based on that. What you allow to happen to others will at some point come back to bite you in the ass. He didn't quite say it that way, did he? Would you turn our nation into a fascist dictatorship just to crush those you have been conditioned to hate? If so, you were never a true patriot to begin with. But let me finish by stating this. The U.S. is an empire. We are the leaders of the world. What happens here has a ripple effect across the globe. And there are other nations who want to take over as the leader of that world. They want to be in our place. Their sole desire is to crush us, as we are all that is standing in the way of their rise to power and their leadership of the world. Many of the comments in favor of this current anti-constitutional act are coming from troll accounts, troll farms whose purpose is to try and increase approval for any law that stands in direct opposition to our constitutional rights. They also give a lot of praise to people who stand in favor of these things, and they bully and intimidate those who stand against such. On that note, I find it absurd that the people complaining that their rights are being violated because they're asked to wear a face mask to prevent the spread of disease are now silent as American citizens are being abducted off the streets by geared, heavily armed, unidentified groups, shoved into unmarked vehicles, taken to unknown locations, and not even told why. Just stop and think for a moment, please, really think. What exactly are you trying to do? Okay, this is the total annihilation of our civil liberties. Sure, the White House might remain standing, the Statue of Liberty will still look out over New York Harbor, but everything this nation once stood for will have been destroyed by the very people who are claiming to save it. Look, folks, there is another source acting here. There is an outside group that wants American citizens to attack each other, and is feeding the delusions of those who are most easily deceived. Okay, they want us fighting each other and defending the destruction of our nation as we think that we're saving it. Why? Because they want us to destroy our nation from within. That makes their job, their takeover, easier, doesn't it? One method of manipulation works as follows. They're telling certain people that they stand for your freedom because they won't force you to wear a face mask to prevent disease. And over this one issue, they've convinced so many of you that they really are the ones standing for your freedom. Yet at the same time, they're calling for the most anti-constitutional acts to be committed against American citizens on American soil. And many of you allow that, never considering that this is an actual infringement on the constitutional rights of American citizens. They are attempting to silence those whose views they disagree with and quash all opposition to government. That is not the American way. That is what happens under dictators, fascists, and communists. They're making false accusations against peaceful protesters. And before I go on, understand, I know that there have been protesters who went on riots, and I don't agree with the rioting, okay? But what's happening now is we've seen it all on the news. We've seen it happen, that there are actual law enforcement officials going to peaceful protesters, people who are unarmed, they're ungeared, and they're not acting violently towards anyone. And the law enforcement officials are attacking them violently, okay? And so now we have, unidentified federal agents abducting these peaceful protesters. They're not going to rioters, okay? I've heard people say, "Oh, well, they're just taking rioters off the streets, making the streets safer." That's not true. That's not what's happening. They're calling these people rioters in order to justify doing this to them, this anti-constitutional act against them. Anyway, they're making false accusations against peaceful protesters who have the constitutional right to engage in peaceful protest and free speech. Okay, and they're calling them rioters. They're claiming that they're violent when they're not. And then they're using that as an excuse to take away the right to protest and to oppose the government and the right to free speech. And they're using that as justification to send, I'm just going to say it, the secret police out. These unidentified federal agents to drag these people, these protesters off the streets. As unconstitutional as it gets, folks. Okay, they're using that as an excuse to have American citizens who simply committed the crime, which I guess it's a crime now, of opposing the government, grabbed and dragged off the streets by geared, armed, unidentified, supposedly federal agents, okay, thrown into unmarked vehicles, deny their right to be told why they're being abducted, etc. And some people actually... Where am I? Right. And some people actually believe that this is the right thing to do. Tell me, do you really believe that the people calling for this to be done to American citizens give a damn about our freedom? If so, why? Just because they told you that they're the ones defending your right to choose not to wear a protective face mask? Really? Over one issue, the face mask issue, you believe that these are the people who are truly defending our freedom? These people are appeasing the masses by giving them something small, so that the masses ignore the huge thing that is being taken away. That's how the manipulation works. Who is so foolish that they can't see past this? We must resist them. I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat, theist or atheist, male or female. I don't care what your race is. I don't care about your sexual orientation or any other issue that is currently being used to divide all of us. Those of us who love this nation must stand together in defense of it, or we will lose both our nation and our freedom. In fact, we're going to lose every last human right we've ever had if we don't stop this now. Everyone on all political sides must join the resistance.